Ladies and gentlemen, federal employees, today we're talking about which of your federal benefits actually stick around if you pass away. If you die, what your spouse can inherit and what they can't inherit. Because at the end of the day, we all want to make sure that you have a great retirement, but also something ever happened to you, is your spouse going to be taken care of? That's one of, at least for most people, what their goal is. So let's talk about the different things you might have and how it might pass or not pass to your spouse. Let's start with the TSP, the Thrift Savings Plan. Now, the thrift, fortunately, all of that money, assuming your spouse is your beneficiary on your account, if they're the primary beneficiary 100%, then an entire account would go to them. And as a spouse, they can actually keep the money there in the TSP. They can move it to an IRA if they want in their own name, which is great. Now, if you pass away and leave your TSP to a non-spouse, like a kid or anyone else, it can't stay in the TSP. But if you leave it to a spouse, then of course they can keep it in the TSP if they desire to. They can also move it to an IRA if they want. Next, what life insurance do you have? Do you have any FEGLI, the federal government's life insurance? Again, I've got other videos on how that works, but most people don't keep very much of this into retirement because it's so darn expensive. But that's the question asked. What life insurance do you have? What will you have when you retire? And as you actually age, what will be left? So your spouse, again, you want to make sure they're taken care of. Most people don't have the need for life insurance as they get deeper and deeper into their career and in retirement. But again, I don't want to speak for you. I don't know, but you want to check that out. What life insurance do you need? And what will you have at that point? Next, pension. Your spouse, there is absolutely no way they will keep 100% of your pension. Now, they can keep a piece of it, but not 100%. They can either keep 50% or 25%, depending on what you elect. Again, you elect what your spouse will get when you basically fill out the retirement application. So about 6 months or so before retirement, you fill out the application that says, hey, I want them to receive 50% of my pension if I pass away, or 25% of my pension when I pass away. But of course, this option will cost you 10% of your pension when you're both alive. This option will cost you 5% of your pension when you're both alive. So these are not free options. You do have to pay for them. But if you do pay for them, they'll allow your spouse to keep your pension and keep your health insurance. If they're on your health insurance, you want them to continue to be on your health insurance after you pass. They have to have at least one of these survivor benefits to keep your pension and your health insurance to stay on the plan. Now, keep in mind, what happens, let's say, if you pass away while working? If that is what happens, then generally speaking, spouses are eligible to 50% of whatever pension you accrued up to that point, and they'll be able to get that. If you go after retirement, it's a lot simpler. You choose exactly what they have. Before retirement, you don't have to make any election. If you're still working, the default is they would get 50% of whatever pension you accrued up to that point. Again, if you're still working when you pass away. Next, Social Security. This is an interesting one. This one's a little more dynamic. But let me just give an example. Let's say you and your spouse are both in your 80s and one of you passes away. What happens with Social Security? Let's say your benefit is $3,000 a month and your spouse has a benefit of $2,000 a month. Let's say you die, spouse 1 dies, okay, but spouse 2 is still kicking, still alive, okay? What would happen? Well, basically, whichever benefit is the bigger of the two, in this example, this one is the one that would actually stick around. So this amount would actually start going to spouse 2, and their own amount would actually drop off. That's in a nutshell how it works when people are older, when one person passes away. The bigger one sticks around. So if your benefit, your Social Security benefit, is the bigger of both of yours, that's probably the one that is going to be passed to your spouse, as they call this survivor benefits for Social Security purposes, okay? So, but again, if your benefit's a smaller amount, when one of you passes away, so for example, let's say this happened but opposite. Let's say the person with the smaller benefit dies. Well, spouse 1 would just keep their own benefit because it's the bigger of the two. Whichever one is bigger is the one that's going to stick around. So you want to make sure for your plan that what's left with your investments, your TSP or other investments, life insurance, piece of your pension, Social Security, you want to make sure that you add all these things up and that your spouse is going to be okay. And you want to have that conversation with them. You don't want to just say, oh yeah, that looks about right, and then end the conversation there. You want to actually have a real in-depth conversation saying, hey, look, when we're both alive, we're going to have about this much of income. right? $10,000 a month or whatever you're going to have. And if I pass away, you'd be left with $7,000. Is that going to be enough for you, right? To have a conversation like that so you guys can be blunt about what's going to happen, because generally speaking, one spouse is the money spouse that does all the money stuff. The other spouse often does. Now, that's not always the case, but many times it is. So if you are the money spouse, in my opinion, it's your responsibility to make sure your non-money spouse knows what's going on. They know what's going on. They understand at least the basics of what they're going to be getting, to make sure no matter what, they've got a general idea of where to go look to find stuff at the very, very least. So I hope that's helpful. It gives you an idea of what benefits you will pass to your spouse as a federal employee. And I'll see you in the next video.